The assessment centre, the final stage of the degree apprenticeship application process. You've done the online application, you've submitted your CV, submitted your cover letter, answered all those long application questions. You send that off and they've come back and said you're successful. And then it was the online testing. Maybe it was a personality test, a situational judgment, or a game-based assessment like Arctic Shores. You completed that and they came back to you again saying you were successful. Maybe you've done a video interview, a pre-recorded interview where you talk at text on the screen. You did that and now they've come back to you with that email saying you're successful. Or maybe it was a phone call saying you have made it to the assessment centre stage. That is what this full guide is all about. It is about getting you through the assessment centre stage, the final stage, the last thing in the way between you and the degree apprenticeship you want. You're going to be in this assessment centre with maybe 10 other candidates all competing for the same role. You need to make sure you're on your top game. You need to know what you're doing so that you can perform your very best. This is what the Assessment Centre Full Guide is all about. I'm going to be going through the group exercise, what role to play in the group exercise so that you come across as a good candidate, but also not someone who's too bossy and can't work within a team. I'm going to go through the case study. What is a case study? Maybe you've heard of it in geography. I'm going to go through what a case study is in the degree apprenticeship context and how you succeed in the case study exercise. I'm going to go through the presentation, and I'm also going to give you examples of presentations I have used, real proven presentations which have got me degree apprenticeship offers. And I'm also going to show you the best way of creating these presentations and the best way of delivering these presentations, and then more just general tips and strategies about the assessment centre. But in this first part 1 of the Assessment Centre Full Guide, I'm going to be going through the interviews. This is the ultimate interview guide for the Assessment Centre. So what I'm going to do this is I'm going to go through the structure of an interview, how it works, and then basically give you common interview questions, and then I'll go on to tips and everything like that afterwards. So first of all, with the structure, these interviews are strength-based interviews. For experienced roles, when you're 10 years older or so, you might end up getting some technical interviews. You're in the interview, you're a senior engineer or whatever it is, and they start asking you technical questions in the interview to check that you know how to do the job. Or even you might have heard of people at university, you might have done it yourself, you've had a university interview and they start asking you some technical questions. Nothing like that, okay? These apprenticeships are strength-based, motivation-based, behaviour-based. They're not technical at all, so don't worry about that. In general, they're not going to be technical. So when I say they're strength-based, what do I mean by that? Well, it means they're basically going to be asking you about your strengths in terms of like values and behaviors, so like team working and communication and all that. So it's not asking you for like your technical topic, like do you know what Canberra is or something, and you're like, what is? No, it's about strength. They're going to be asking you about your strengths, so about your communication, about the soft skills. Basically, that's what this interview is about, is checking that you have these soft skills, right? And it's going to split these into sections based on values / behaviors of the company. Basically, almost every company I did an interview with, they split up their interview like this into basically sections based on those strengths. So first of all, they'd have an introduction sort of section where just a couple of questions, tell us about yourself, all that sort of stuff. And then they go into this strength-based section stuff, and they would basically have about 2 or 3 questions for each of their values in each section. So you can literally just go onto every single actionable step right now, go onto every one of the companies that you think you're going to get an interview for, and just look at their values. I mean, you should have done this already anyway for your CV, cover letter and application questions, but if you haven't, don't worry about it. Go onto it now for this interview, have a look at their values, write them down, and you basically need to start thinking about what sort of questions they're going to ask you. So let's say it's National Highways. I've gone on their website, look at their values. Safety, integrity, passion, ownership and teamwork. Straight away that means you know you're going to get 2 or 3 questions about safety, 2 or 3 questions about integrity, 2 or 3 questions about passion, etc., ownership, teamwork, okay? This is like the best way of like predicting what questions you're going to get, because they're almost always split up like this. Like most of the ones I did were split up into these values. And they'll basically move on to a section. They'll like say, now we're moving on to the next section, integrity. So integrity is a really important part of our company. Can you tell us a time you've had to show integrity? That's how they word it. So they do like a sort of opening introductory sentencey paragraph, and then they'll go into that. So say they were just starting the teamwork section, they would say something like that. Okay, so that's the ownership section over. Now let's move on to the teamwork section. Our company's all about collaboration and working together as a team, and by 2040 we want to have completely agile and mobile team or something so we can work together across the globe. With that in mind, can you tell us a time that you've worked as a team? That's the sort of way you've got to expect these questions and how they're structured. Let me give you another example. So Bentley, just Google the website, look at their values: innovation, sustainability, collaboration, authenticity, integrity. So you can expect a couple of questions here, like on innovation. So they could say something along these lines, like I'm making this up here, but this is the kind of thing that they could say is, one of our key values is innovation, and we're always trying to push the boundaries of science and technology. Can you tell us about a few of our recent innovations? Right, you see how they've used innovation in a question, and now you need to know about innovation. But if you'd done your research and you'd known that the value is innovation, you could have expected these questions. So this is one of the highest leverage tasks you can do to prepare for an interview, is look at these values and basically jot down a few questions for each one. The next value is sustainability. So you can expect a question like, what do you think are the biggest challenges this industry? And then they're obviously expecting you to say sustainability, or how can our industry become more sustainable? Or what do you know of Bentley's work to become more sustainable? You can be expecting all these questions. For example, you could just Google a random one. So say you're interested in finance, Goldman Sachs. I just Googled it now just quickly, and you can see that their key values are partnership, client service, integrity, excellence. So my best guess, and I've never done this interview so I couldn't tell you for sure, but my best guess is they would probably split up the interview similarly, where they'd have a partnership section, a couple of questions on that, a couple on client service. Maybe they'll ask something like, when's the time you've worked hard for a customer, or like delivered great service for a customer, or how would you deliver good service to a client, that sort of question. Or integrity, when's the time you've had to show integrity? Or excellence, when have you striven for excellence in a task? Doing that sort of preparation is going to get you ready for when they split it into those sections. And let's say, even if they didn't split into those sections, okay, let's say one of these companies decided to do something different, they decided actually we're not going to do it like that. That is still extremely good preparation, okay? So even if the exact interview doesn't end up exactly like this, chances are it will, but just in case it won't, you're still going to, you're going to be in the mindset to do it. Like when you've gone through partnership, client service, integrity, excellence, you've thought of answers for each one. No matter what they throw at you, you're going to be ready. So it's really high leverage preparation that I'd recommend you're doing before your interviews. And sort of going over these questions again, like the morning before your interview, is really going to get you in the mindset. And that's something I say a lot of assessment centres, is you need to make sure in the morning beforehand you're getting into the mindset, because you can wake up at like 7 a.m. and like you're not here, you're not present, you're just thinking about something completely else. You're not here, you're not ready to do an interview. If you were to step into an interview in that state, it's not going to go well because your mind just isn't in the right place. Whereas if you do a bit of questioning, if you do a bit of research, like this is what I always do before an assessment centre. I'm going to go into more detail about my like pre-assessment centre like drills and like my warm-up basically. I'll go into that later in the full guide. But in short, doing something like some research, looking at practice interview questions, reading about the values, that's going to get you in the mindset. Because you basically want to think, when you're in this interview, everything you're thinking is through that lens of values. Like every single answer they give you, you're thinking about sustainability, collaboration, integrity, authenticity, right? Innovation, sustainability, passion, right? Or whatever the values are of your company, you basically need to be thinking through, you need to be looking through that prism of those values for every single question that you're answering. So now that I've explained what a strength-based interview is, you know it's those values and they're doing questions for each of those values, let me just go through the whole interview and basically just give you like the common interview questions they're going to ask you and how it's all going to be put together. So the first couple of questions are going to be introduction, sort of tell us about yourself questions, motivation questions, all right? So you need to be prepared for these. These are going to come up in basically every single one. You need to, there's like no excuse not to have a perfect answer to these questions, because you can expect them in every single one. And like, you need to make sure like you have it run through your head, you know exactly what you're going to say. So the first one is going to be introduce yourself or tell us about yourself. You need to make sure this is relevant. They're not asking for your life story, like when I was 4 I got, like, no one cares, okay? They're basically just, what they're sort of trying to say is like, tell us how you're a good fit for the role. Like they don't word it, they word it all like open and nice. Tell us about yourself, we're interested to hear about you. Really all they're trying to say is like, tell us why you would be a good fit for this role. That's basically what they're saying. So here's sort of my like sample answer for tell us about yourself. Here's like a sample structure for how you want to answer this tell us about yourself. So it'd be something like, I'm a year 13 student, currently studying these A levels. At school I do these extracurricular activities like problem solving club, and I did the maths challenge last year. I'm also like a member of the school hockey team, that gets you a bit of teamwork in there. Maybe you're the captain, gets a bit of leadership in there. And then you can talk about your interest in this actual industry. So I'm interested in this industry because I did a bit of work experience, drop that work experience in, say a few of the things you did. So I performed a calculation at a construction site, which that straight away implies to the recruiter numerical skills. And then I had to like lead a team doing this, and I had to follow all the safety rules and whatever that is. And then you can mention like a bit of volunteering. So it's sort of like a bit of a summary of your CV, but don't look at your CV when you're doing this. This needs to be like separate and like a prepared answer and structured. But it's sort of a bit like your CV, and you're basically telling them why you're a good fit for the role. So that's what you want to think about when you're doing this introduce. You want to try and get as many skills in there as possible when you're talking about your current studies, these are A-levels, maybe like you're doing an EPQ, because then that tells them you've got written communication skills, which is important for writing reports. Just try and drop in like everywhere you can, like little tiny skills that you can. So introduce, tell us about yourself, talk about your current studies, extracurriculars, why you got interested in this subject, maybe work experience you've done, courses you've done, that sort of thing. That's what you want to do for that question. And then a similar question they can do is talk us through your CV, and this is where like you want to actually talk through your CV. Okay, so that first one is like a scripted, and it's not scripted because you don't want to read it off a script. Because if you never read something off a script, like I know these are common interview questions, and you could write a script for each of these, and it means right, that question comes off, let me right, read off a script. Okay. Don't do that, because you can, trust me, you can hear when something gets read off a script. This is something I'm going to talk about later in the full guide, but you can hear when something gets read off a script. And also, like, it's very obvious when your eyes are just down like that from the camera, right, when you're doing an interview. And obviously if you're in person, you can just have like your like 5-page script and flick through and find each one, could you? So don't script it, but you like need to like have it scripted in your mind, if that makes sense. Like you need to have the structure scripts in your mind. So with all these questions, sure, prepare them in the sense that make some notes on, right, I'm going to talk about this. That's absolutely fine. I'm saying do that, okay? So I'm saying for all these questions I'm going to mention, definitely write notes, have like 4 lines of like structure basically, but it's structure. It's not word for word scripting, okay? Just bear that in mind. So this introduce, tell us about yourself. You've basically got it like planned is probably a better word than scripted. You've got it planned. The next one is talk us through your CV, and this is where you literally just talk through your CV. You just highlight the key things basically. You're not going to have time. It's not word for word reading your whole thing. Like they'll have already done it. They're going to do it as you speak. You basically sort of want to pick out the best things in there, and if you can, like add more detail. So like, say you have a work experience in, maybe you wrote 3 lines about that work experience. This is an opportunity to say more about the work experience. Say we did this, just say extra things that you weren't able to put in your CV. So it's basically just go over your CV and add things. So it's sort of imagine having like a 3-page CV, and you can put in like the things you didn't have room to fit in. And that's really important, where you need to make sure that you have copies of your CV with you, but I'm going to get more into that later. And then sort of the final like introductory question that they always do is why do you want this role? Motivation. And there's one really good way of answering that, and that is the 3-pronged approach. Because a lot of people just think, oh, I want this role because I want to work for your company, and then like that's that, and then they'll say something. There's a 3-pronged approach which I've used and works every single time. The interviews are very impressed with this answer. It works very well. The 3-pronged approach involves talking about 3 things. So first of all, the subject, second of all, the company, third of all, the degree apprenticeship. Okay. So let's say it's a DTS degree apprenticeship. Okay, DTS is Digital and Technology Solutions, software developing, that sort of thing. Let's just use that as an example so you can base it off. So you can say something like, I'm applying for this DTS degree apprenticeship at your company because I'm really interested in software development. I've recently read about the rise of AI in the past year or so, and I'd like to be in a career that's on the cutting edge of technology and can improve people's lives. I read about how AI is being used in bionic arms to help people without limbs like live their lives, and that's the sort of positive impact I want to have on the world. There you go. That's answered the first bit about why you want the role. Why specifically DTS? Because you want to do all the coding that can help people change their lives or whatever. Okay, so that's the first bit. But then you move on to the second bit. Now, the reason I want to do this DTS degree apprenticeship at your company is because I really respect your company's values. After doing research on your values such as sustainability, I was really impressed by your commitment to net zero by 2040 and your commitment to using circular economy. Sustainability is really important to me, and I believe that the planet needs to be protected. And this is one of the reasons I want to work for your company, because you're such a responsible company. On top of that, I'm also interested in the work that you're doing in the field of quantum computing. I recently read about your new quantum innovation that you did, and quantum computing is something that inspires me. Like something like that, okay? That is basically the second thing you want to do, is why you want to work for the company. Quite often a sustainability thing is good for there. Obviously it depends on the industry. So something like finance, maybe that's nothing to do with sustainability, but something like engineering, any engineering in 2024, they care about sustainability. So 100% getting a sustainability, but then also getting something else, and you want to make sure like you're name dropping like products or projects that they've done. So if it's like a construction company in this, you can talk about sustainability and then say, I also read about your work on the Saudi Arabia metro, and I saw that was really interesting how you use like magnetic rails, or like, do you know what I mean? You say something like that. Or if it's like, if it is a DTS company, you can say, I recently read about the new AI you launched, which can now like beat a chess grandmaster or something. So you want to be getting in some values that align with them. That's a good thing. You say that, oh, I saw you have these values and I align with them. Sustainability, integrity, collaboration, whatever that may be, and then I'll say, oh, I saw some projects and these projects inspired me. They're the sort of projects I want to work on. I like the way your company approaches environmental responsibility. So it's that sort of thing. That's the second paragraph you want, is why you want to work specifically for your company. And then that's where most people stop. Like they might have done those two, but then they stop. This is where you can get a final bit in, and this can literally be like, again, a scripted answer. Well, not scripted, like planned answer. I'm going to use planned because you know where you're going. That can just straight away just get you an extra 5 marks on that question. So you do those two and then say, I specifically want a degree apprenticeship because I'm interested in making a positive impact in the world. I want to be doing practical work that can change people's lives. Straight away, that just gives you extra stuff. Like, it shows your actual motivation. You want to make a positive impact to the world, to the business, and that really shows off well, compared to someone who doesn't really explain why they want a degree apprenticeship. Like, you can add on to this something like, I really want to give myself a challenge. I know that a degree apprenticeship is going to be more time consuming because I have a full-time job 80% of my time. I also have to study for the degree 20% of the time, and this is going to be a challenge with time management and making sure I can do this. However, I'm the type of person who thrives in challenges, so this is the sort of thing I want to do. Like, so you can basically take those two angles. When I did it, I'd do both. So I'd say that I want to make a positive impact on the world through like practical work rather than academic, theoretical. And then second of all, I'd say like I want to challenge myself because degree apprenticeships are more time pressured, and I think that's the sort of challenge I thrive in, and that just sounds really good. Okay, so for that question, why do you want this role, or your motivations, I've basically just given you complete sample answer there of the three-pronged response you want. First of all, why the subject? Second of all, why the company? And third of all, why specifically a degree apprenticeship? And those are basically the three like standard questions they're going to give you at the start of every interview. So then if we move on to the values sort of based questions. So as I mentioned earlier, you then go into the values, this safety, integrity, teamwork, authenticity, like they'll have all these different sections and talk about that. What sort of questions they ask within each? So first of all, there's like the obvious ones that are like in the name. So when it's a question on safety, they're going to ask questions something like sort of hypothetical questions, like what would you do if you saw someone doing something unsafe? There's going to be questions about like sort of research, knowledge-based questions. As I said, like if it's sustainability, what do you know our company is doing with sustainability? Or what's the importance of sustainability? If it's innovation, it's like, what are the recent innovations on the industry? How do you stay on top of innovations within the industry? That sort of thing. So there's going to be questions which you just need to do that. You need to just have a brainstorm, as I said, look at these values, be like, okay, what sort of things are they going to ask me? And now the next type they're going to do is star questions. Okay, you might have heard this before. This is a very like common thing, star. And it basically needs to be something that's embedded in your head, like you don't even think about, because if you're still thinking about it, you probably haven't mastered the skill as well as you could. So the STAR method is situation, task, action, result, and it's the way to answer a certain type of question. Okay, so there's certain types of questions which you need a star response, and these are questions where they go, tell me a time when you have da 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 da, and this straight away you need to that needs to like trigger something in your brain. Whenever you hear tell me a time when, star, you need to just think star method. Okay, situation, task, action, result. And it's how you answer these questions properly. It's how the companies want you to answer these questions. So let me give an example of a sort of question. So let's say the the value, so we're in one of these value sections. The value we're talking about is teamwork. So they're asking questions about teamwork, like why do you think teamwork is important? That's the sort of questions they might ask at the start, like some generic why do you think teamwork is important, or how do you think we could integrate teamwork into our like organization more, that sort of thing. You're always going to get a star one for every single one of these values. Okay, so for this teamwork section, we're going to get a star on teamwork, and that means tell me a time when you've worked as a team. That's the sort of question, and you got to think star. Tell me a time, star. Okay, situation, task, action, result. So and this is how you answer it basically. So the situation was we were on D of E, we were lost, off the path, it was foggy, group members were panicking, right? Task, we needed to get back to the path and like finish the day, and everyone needed to calm down. Action, so I took charge, I did some like strong decisive decision making, I like talked to everyone, calmed everyone's nerves, like mapped us back onto the path or whatever. The result was everyone calmed down, we were able to keep going, we got back on the path, we finished the expedition, finished our reward. Okay, that's how you do the structure. Obviously I've done that really short for you there just so I can explain the structure. This is the sort of thing where you want, it's like a 2-3 minute answer, maybe more, where you go in detail about this example, but that's how you structure it. So explain the situation, you're on D of E, lost or whatever, the task was need to get back to the path, so the action was I got us back to the path, result was we got back to the path, right? So that's how you need to answer these, and it needs to be something that is so unconscious. And the way you can get that skill of being able to do star methods like that, like maybe it's hard for you right now. If I said like, tell me a time when you've worked really hard on something, okay, so maybe you'll be able to think of something, maybe there's this homework or project or coursework that you got, or like maybe there was this like, I don't know, race, swimming race, athletics race, whatever it is that you like worked hard for. Now do the star method, okay? You need to make sure you can do that straight away. You can straight away break it down into a situation, a task, an action, and a result. And the best way to do this is practice. So now there's a bank of like a list of these questions, and like there's even more than this list, but this is like the most common ones that would get asked. Tell me about a time when you worked as a team. Tell me about a time when you worked really hard on something. Tell me a time when you had to have a difficult conversation. Tell me a time when you came up with a creative solution. Tell me a time about when you had to follow a procedure. Tell me about a time when you went above and beyond for a customer. Tell me about a time when you learned from a mistake. Tell me about a time when you led a project. Before every single one of your interviews, you need to make sure you have an answer ready for every single one of those questions. So what I would do is, on the notes in front of me, I would basically write down like team, hard, difficult, creative, procedure, mistake, like leading, dash, and then I'll just put the example. And it basically means whenever the question comes up, I can straight away, if I need to, look down, see the example, be like, okay, they're asking about when I learned from a mistake, oh, it was this time, let me talk about this time and do the star response. So for these questions right now, first of all, you just do like a brainstorming session, like have a think about when have you done these things, when have you worked as a team? You're gonna have this in somewhere, so maybe it's D of E, maybe it's a sports team, or maybe like you had to do a group project, like you had to, in English, like do a group presentation on something, that counts. When you've had to work really hard on something, like have you trained really hard for a sports event or something, or was there like a piece of coursework you had to do that you put loads of effort in, or was there like a piece of homework that you just put loads, or was it an exam that you revised really hard for? It can be anything like that. Like when have you had to have a difficult conversation? Again, think of a time when you've done that. Have this brainstorming session, and first of all, make sure you've got an example for every single one of these questions. And then this is where you practice the STAR method. You basically go through these and you work and you break it down into situation, task, action, result. You write those 4 down for each single one. And then the final step is you basically try and say it into like a 3-minute, 2 or 3, 4-minute answer, basically. So you go from, here's the question team, here's the situation, it was D of E, here's the situation, how can I get this into a 2 or 3 or 4-minute answer? And then you basically say that is how you practice these questions. If you do that for all of these questions, you're going to be completely set, all right? You're going to be complete, because even if they end up bringing like a few other completely random, like tell me about a time when like someone challenged your leadership and you had to do, like it's so specific, so random, you'll probably find that is covered in here. Like you'll be like, oh yeah, I can use the same example I used for leading a project. Right, so that's the best way of preparing for this section, is just making sure you have a STAR response ready for every single one. You understand the STAR response and you're ready to just apply it like that. You're just ready to just straight away just bring up that STAR response, and that's the best way of answering those questions. Okay, so now I'm just going to go on to other sort of random questions. So we've gone through the main questions, those introduction questions, then like the value specific strength-based questions and the star questions which can be included within those values. And now there's just a few other like random questions that I thought of that I just give you a heads up. So the first one you can definitely expect is like, what is the biggest challenge you expect to face as a degree apprentice in this role? And this is the answer I'll just give you the answer I gave every single time. I think it's a really good answer. The biggest challenge I expect to face is the step up from A level to apprenticeship degree level, work level, whatever. Because for example, in engineering, so in the engineering interviews I did, in school you obviously never do engineering because it's not like a subject, you do maths and physics or whatever. So I was just like, I think the biggest challenge I'm going to face is the step up from never having done any actual engineering to starting an engineering role and studying for the degree and just doing it as a role. However, it's a challenge, and this is basically where you can take this question from like, okay, whatever, to like a top 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 question. And that is because you explain the biggest challenge you expect to face, but then you also explain why you're ready to face that, why you are prepared for that, and why it's not actually, like, all you're trying to say here is like, you're sort of trying to say this could be a challenge, but I actually don't think it would be. That's what you're saying here. So the biggest challenge I expect to face is the step up from A level, because it's going to be a complete like new level of knowledge that I have to reach. But I am prepared for this because I'm used to in the past picking up knowledge and having a strong willingness to learn. For example, when I like learned the trumpet, I had to completely learn new techniques and stuff, all that. Therefore, I'm ready for this step up and excited to learn new things. So you see how I flipped it there from saying like, oh, a big challenge is the step up, to it's a step up, but I'm excited. In my past, I've done things like this where I've stepped up my knowledge, where I took up like further maths and I had to learn loads of new things, etc. So that's a really good way of doing it. And another example could be the time management thing. So the biggest challenge I expect to face will be time management and making sure I get everything done, because I have to do a full-time job 80% of my time, but also study for the degree 20% of the time. So a challenge could be keeping up with all my day-to-day corporate responsibilities whilst also making sure that I'm doing all my assignments and revision for my university work. However, in the past, I'm used to this sort of time management. I've done these extracurricular activities and work experience and all this. I did football like 4 times a week while also playing an instrument, while also staying on top of my curricular work. So I'm used to like balancing my time between multiple things and prioritizing tasks. So that's another way you can answer it. And you see again how I've done that. It went from a challenge of, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to manage my time, to actually, because I have really good time management skills, which you can see as evidence from the previous things I've done that I've just said, this isn't going to be a problem. Okay, so that's the best way of answering that question. What are the biggest challenges you expect to face? You basically name a challenge and explain why it doesn't apply to you effectively. The next one is actually quite similar in the sense that they ask the question and then you sort of have to like add a bit on to get a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 response. What's one of your biggest weaknesses? Because you could say a weakness and then leave it at that, and then everyone's just a bit like, okay, well, they start like genuinely thinking about it, like, okay, if that actually is your weakness, then we might not, do you know what I mean? Same with like, if you just left it at what's your biggest challenge, they'll be like, okay, if that actually is a challenge for you, I don't know if I want to hire you, which is why you have to add in the extra thing. It's the same with the weakness. So they're going to say something like, what's one of your biggest weaknesses, or give me some of your weaknesses. You got to say the weaknesses, and then you add on a bit which says, but I'm currently focusing on this, I'm developing this, and actually I've seen an improvement in this, so I know that I'm getting better at this. Because then it gives it a positive twist. It's not just a weakness, it's a weakness you're actually improving. It shows that you know how to improve skills and like willingness to learn new things. And it's a really good way of doing it. So an example of a weakness that I think is a good one is, one of my weaknesses is doing things in too much detail. So for example, when I used to do geography GCSE, I used to do the first couple of questions and I'd write down too much and I'd end up running out of time before the end of the one, because I'd been trying to give such a good answer, I'd been trying to give so much detail, I lost like the big picture of the whole exam. However, this is something that I'm really focused on, because I know it's important that sometimes not every detail is necessary. You need to make sure you've got everything. So I'm basically focused on managing my time, and it's actually been working, because in my recent exams, I actually finished the exam and I actually got more marks per question because the detail wasn't necessary. Like, that's a good way of putting it. Because with these weaknesses, you don't want to put like a weakness necessarily, like, I don't know. Just in my opinion, I think you don't want to put like a proper weakness. Like, my weakness is communication skills. Literally the most fundamental, like the most important skill you need for an apprenticeship, for a job, is communication skills, and you've just gone and said your biggest weakness is communication skills. Like, you're going to have to do a lot of saving to still get that job. So that's where I say, in my opinion, don't do anything major. Don't say anything crazy. Like communication skills, teamwork skills, like leadership skills, or like creativity or innovative ideas, anything like that. Any like fundamental, like important things to the workplace, because straight away you're just self-reporting at that point. Basically, you want to be sort of weaknesses that they're basically strengths, like when you actually, like, let's be honest, they're strengths. So for example, doing too much detail, like, okay, sure, it's a weakness because in your geography exam you run out of time and you probably do too much detail. Let's be honest, that's probably just a good thing, because you're a hard worker, you put in the detail, like, you've got good attention to detail, you just spot loads of, you know what I mean? Putting loads of detail in is really good, something like that. Or like something like, I say yes to too many commitments because I want to help loads of people, and then I end up like having really full time and I have to work really hard. That's not a weakness, that's a strength. Like the fact that you're able, surely a company is going to want that. The fact that you're able to say yes to and juggle loads of projects at the same time. You're going to be like the most productive employee out there. While everyone else is working on like 2 projects a week, you're saying yes to 5 and you're like doing all of them in the same time, right? So it's that sort of weakness that you want to go at. So one of my weaknesses is too much detail. One of my weaknesses is, oh, I say yes to too many things and I help too many people. Like, come on, that's just a strength. You know what I mean? So it's these sort of weaknesses. Have a think about the sort of thing you could do. I've given you 2 examples there, and then just think about the second part of it is like how you're improving it, whatever this weakness is. So say, oh, I say yes to too many people. I'm working on my time management skills to make sure that I can make sure I fit everything into my schedule, whatever it is. Okay, so just again with these 2 questions, remember your 2-pronged answer. What's the biggest challenge? What's the biggest weakness? But how are you gonna like overcome it? How are you currently facing it? How are you dealing with it? And I just want to say here, like, you need to have an answer for this, for these challenges and weaknesses. Like, I know how, like, it'd be sick if you're like, yeah, no challenges, I have no weaknesses. Like, they don't believe you, okay? Because everyone has a weakness. Everyone's gonna face that. Even with the challenges, like, I don't know, going into these, I don't really feel like there's gonna be any challenge. It just is what it is. But like, I had to come up with something. Like, I didn't genuinely think that, oh, I was gonna like have a big step up to a new level. I was just sort of saying that as a challenge. The same with a weakness. Like, you don't have to necessarily think like, oh, I always say yes to too many things. You just sort of have to say that you do. It's one of those where you just sort of got to make it up a tiny bit. Just make sure you do have a weakness, because it's not going to look good if you say, I have no weakness, I have no challenge, or anything like that. Just make sure you got something ready. Okay, now in terms of like rogue questions, you don't actually get too many rogue questions, like at all. They're all standard. They all go through the structure I've done before. So the introduction questions, then the strength-based ones with the star and that sort of thing, and then like the challenge and weakness questions, whatever. There's not really many rogue questions. Like I basically had a long think about what sort of like rogue questions have I been given that I like didn't even understand. Right, they're literally, I didn't even know what they were talking about. And there really weren't many. So one I got down here was, this one, I don't even know what this was about. And I'd just say, like, in general, don't worry about rogue questions. Don't worry about sitting in the interview and like expecting a rogue question, because as you've just seen, I've probably spent however long I've spent, like half an hour, talking about like what the 99% of questions they do have this 1%, like maybe they might do a random question. Don't worry about it, because first of all, chances are when you're like in the interview, when you're like in the zone, when you're in flow state, your mind's just going to be able to think of something like really clever. Like even like maybe watching this video right now, you might not be able to think of what sort of response you'd give. Like I'll say a question, you're like, okay, I don't know what I'd say. But like when you're actually in the zone, in the interview, in flow state, your mind's just more switched on and you get it. So chances are it would probably be fine in the interview anyway. But even if it's not, it's like you really don't have to worry about when they throw out these completely rogue questions you don't have an answer. Multiple times in an interview, when they've sent out a rogue question, I've just said, I don't have an answer for that. Sorry, I can't think of anything right now. And I've still got that job. Like, it's not like if you miss a question straight away, they're deleting you from the list or whatever. No, it just means you've got to rely on your other ones. And like from what I've been telling you about these other ones, like your other answers are going to be so good, like they're going to be so much better than everyone else's, that you've sort of got like a buffer. Like it's not a problem if you like miss like a question because it's so random out of nowhere. So really don't worry about it. I've just like given it to you here just as some food for thought. Just to be honest, more than anything, when these questions come up, I'm just more amused than anything. I think that's a better mindset to take. It's just to be sort of amused about it, just find it a bit funny, because then there's no pressure. If you start being like, oh my god, I'm gonna lose this job because I don't know the answer to this rogue question. Oh, your mind's just gonna start overthinking, and you're just gonna get completely out of it. It's gonna disrupt your focus for the rest of the interview, and then it's going to mess you up, right? So when this rogue question comes, just like thinking, like when this question I'm about to tell you came up, I was just thinking in my head, like, what is this? Who came up with this question? This is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. How is this an interview question? I just found it quite funny. I sort of just said some waffle, and then straight away, when it continued with the normal questions, I was back into it. Like, I was back into thinking, I wasn't distracted. Whereas if you start getting distracted and like worried, like, oh my god, I've messed up this question, for the rest of the interview, you're not even present. Like you're still in your mind thinking about how you messed up the last question. Don't worry about it, okay? But here's one of the rogue questions they asked me, and it was, what are the opportunities and downsides of electronic communication? What does that even mean? That question, like, I'm pretty sure is like asking me like, what are the opportunities and downsides of Zoom? And I was applying to be an engineer or something, just like a normal engineer, and they're asking me about the opportunities and downsides of electronic communication. And this is where I just sort of had to, like, you just got to pull random stuff, pull in random research, pull in random values, just say loads of random stuff. When you get questions like these, just if you can get something out, it's better than nothing. Just try and say something. So I'd say something like, oh yeah, one of the opportunities is it's more sustainable. I know that your company really cares about sustainability. Electronic communications mean they don't need as much business travel because you can connect via like Teams and email or whatever. So I think that's really good. And also sending things by email rather than post, it like saves on paper and recycling and stuff. So it's like, I had nothing on that. Like when that question first came up, I was sitting there for 2 seconds like, what? But if you just like really think about it, as I said, once you're in flow state, once you're in the interview, you're gonna work out there's something that you can say. So I said something like that, and I said, but then I said, like, with the downsides, I don't think it's as good collaboration, like it's not as good teamwork. It's better when everyone's in the office. But I basically, fun little story for you. I basically talked for like 2 minutes about how I don't agree with home working. That's the downsides of electronic. I think everyone should be in an office. And the person who was interviewing me, the way he just responded was like, oh, so I work from home, by the way. And then he just paused for like 5 seconds. And I was just like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And then didn't say anything, and then he sort of said, okay, thanks for your answer, and then just continued on. And yeah, I basically slated home working for like two minutes and said it's a waste of time, and this guy's like, I permanently work from home, like, do you know what I mean? So it's like, if I in an interview can have an absolute shocker like that was a shocker from me, basically just effectively just having a go at the interviewer for working from home and like saying it's like, it's not very good, it's a waste of time, like people need to make an effort to get into the office. And I've just said, like, and he works from home. I still got that job even though I said that. So I just wanted to tell you this story because chances are you're going to get a rogue interview question at some point. Really don't worry about it. If you say nothing because you genuinely don't have an answer, that's what I said for some of mine, don't worry about it, okay? I've done that, I still got the job. And also, if you say something, chances are it's decent. So it's like, it's better than nothing. Chances are it's actually bad. Like, literally, that question right there about the home working, I would have got like a -3 probably on my score. Like, it was actively bad, and I still got the job. So I just wanted to tell you that story, just to know, like, it really doesn't matter, don't worry about it. Right, there's one more sort of like extra question that I just want to go over that they ask, and they actually seem to ask this in quite a lot, in like an alarming large number of these interviews, which is not something I'm very happy with. I just don't think it's very professional. And basically the question is, they're going to ask you something like, so have you applied to university? What are you studying at university? Or have you applied to other apprenticeships? What other apprenticeship companies have you applied to? Like, have you got any other apprenticeship offers? All of that sort of like other stuff that's not related to them. It's nothing to do with them. I don't know why they're asking it. They can get away with it because most of these people early careers, they're all like 18. It's not very professional because it's nothing to do with you. Yeah, you don't need to know. So it's just something that you need to be prepared of, because the first time this happened, this got me completely off guard, because straight up, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not going to tell you as a company what I'm doing at university, what I'm doing in like what other apprenticeship offers I've done, what other apprenticeship companies I've applied to. Like, it's nothing to do with you. It's like, that's the first thing, just out of principle. I don't know why you're asking. It's not relevant. It's nothing to do with your role. It's like, you know, in like courtroom dramas where like the lawyer stands up and says the line of questioning is not relevant or something. You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm thinking when I'm in this. I'm like, you asking this question has nothing to do with you finding out if I'm a good candidate for the role. It's you trying to do some snooping around and trying to find out what's going on. Second of all, from like a negotiation, like, just thinking from like a business perspective, like if you're in a business and you're like doing a negotiation, you're not going to like give all your cards away in a sense. If you want to buy this product, you're not going to like say how much money you have available, because like say you want to buy this product which is £100 and you're not going to tell them I actually have 500, because then they'll make the price like 400 or something. You're going to tell them you have like 60 quid. So that they charge you 60, you know what I mean? You're not going to just give out all your hands and be like, yeah, I've got this offer, I got this offer, I got this offer, I replied to this one. It's like, so to be honest, those ones, first of all, just be ready for it, to be honest, because it completely took me off guard the first time. I was not expecting it. I wasn't expecting the company to like stoop that low. I was expecting some professional standards from them. But they said that sort of thing, and it completely took me off guard, because I was thinking like, what do I say? You basically just make sure you work out what you want to say. My advice to you would be, don't actually tell them, right? Because it's none of their business. Out of principle, why should they know? It's nothing to do with them. Secondly, it's not going to help you. Like, it's not going to help you telling them you've got all these offers, because you could say, oh yeah, I've got all these offers. Then they're just probably not. They might decide not to hire you because they think you're not going to go to the company. Or like you could say, oh, I don't have any other offers. This is the only one I've applied to. And then they're not going to hire you because you've got no offers from anywhere else. So they might think you're not good enough to get offers. Like, whatever you say, they can like use it against you and not work for you. So genuinely, I'm saying this right now, you're better off just saying like, to be honest, like what I would do by the end, I would just be like, yeah, I've applied to university. And then they're asking me like, oh, would you rather go to university, or like how would you choose university or university? And I was just like, I'll go with the one that I think is better. And then like by the end, I was like, actually, I think I might go to university because you're annoying me, because you're asking about it. So just either have like a small story where you just say like, oh yeah, I'm applying to you. Just say something small, or to be honest, just have some confidence about it and just say, do you know what, it's none of your business, can we go on to the next question? Bear that in mind. It's a shame that the companies do that. I'd expect some more professional standards from them, but that's just, if they want to operate like that, they want to operate like that. But I just don't like, they can put all integrity and ethical in their like value statement on their website, but then you're asking questions like that which have nothing to do with anyone. So you probably see I'm a bit like annoyed by this, just because I think it's like them trying to take advantage of people, early careers who've never had an interview before and they don't really know what's going on. But it's none of their business. So to be honest, I'd just say, just ignore that question, waste of time. Right, now we're going to move on. This is a thing a lot of people ask, which is, what are the good questions to ask an interview? Okay, because you're going to do your interview. You're basically, I've gone through all the interview questions you're going to do, and then you're going to get to the end and they're going to say, do you have any questions for me? If you say no, straight away you've missed out on like 10 marks, all right? You're getting an extra 10 marks just from saying a few questions, all right? And there's two types of questions you want to do, okay? The first ones are waffle questions, okay? They're questions like you as a person don't even understand what they're trying to say. They're just questions that sound good, and you're just basically getting them to give you marks, right? Because like you sound more interested. So I'll give you a few examples that I would use, like, how will you measure the success of an apprentice on this program? I don't care. Can you describe the team I would be working within? What challenges am I likely to face day to day as an apprentice? Like, I don't really care. But just saying those, they're like sort of complicated, interesting questions that they won't have been asked before, right? Because the second lot of questions is the ones everyone asks, and I'll go through those in a second. But these first ones are ones that like no one's asking questions like these, because like no one cares, and B, like they don't even mean anything. Like, how will you measure the success of an apprentice on this program? Like, let's be honest, you probably don't care. Just say like 2 or 3 of those, just because it makes like the recruiter think about, like, if they have to properly think about a question, or if they like finish a question off with, does that answer your question? You know you've done it right. Because if it's a question they can give you the answer and they're happy, then you haven't challenged them enough. You need to challenge them with the question they have to think about. Like, what are the challenges I'm likely to face day to day? Because then they'll be like, oh, that's actually a good one, let me think about that. They'll give you an answer, and then they'll say, has that answered your question for you? That shows they're not confident they've answered it because they've never heard that question before. So that's like, if you can get the recruiter to do that, to like pause and be like, that's a good question, and then say, did I answer your question? You've won, okay? So those are the sort of questions you want. Start off with those like 3, and then you get down to like the actual important questions, like the questions that you actually need to know, that you like want to know because it's useful. My strategy for getting degree apprenticeships that I tell you guys is get as many offers as you can. Get loads and loads of offers, and then in like July or August or whatever, you then start deciding like which one you end up. So it's like in August you still have like 5 offers. That's my personal strategy for doing it. I think it's the best way of doing it. So this is where you need to ask important questions for these comparison choices. So you want to be asking questions like, what university is it? Because for some reason in these job adverts, like they don't have very clear information. Like it's not like they always have like one specific bit about the university. They just don't. Sometimes you don't know what the university is. You need to ask about the university. You need to ask about what the actual course is, like the title of the course, the actual apprenticeship standard you're going to be doing. You need to ask what are the sort of like virtual or in-person in university, in terms of like, do you go in for lectures or are you at home? Is it day release, block release? So just make sure in that interview you're getting lots of university information, because chances are you probably don't have that much, because in the job description they often don't go into detail. So get all that university information, and then start asking some like important questions that matter to you about the actual job. So things like working from home, or like how many days in the office, what are the working hours, you have like flexible working hours, things like that basically, because then you can put those all into a spreadsheet, and it means you can then compare. Once you have like 5 offers, you can say, okay, this one is like in person, this one's virtual, I would prefer in person, so I'm going to not do the virtual one, like that sort of thing. And because this is your best opportunity in the interview to ask those important questions, because when you have to start sending emails and dealing with like HR and they just take ages and you don't get your answers back like at all. Like I've emailed stuff before and they took like 2 months to get back to me on some questions. So just make sure you're getting those important questions done in the interview. So now that is basically the bulk of the interview that I've done. I've gone through the whole structure, all the different questions, good questions for you to ask. I'm now just going to go through some like admin-y stuff about how to prepare for an interview, how to present yourself, all that sort of stuff, because again, this is important. First of all, dress code. Your dress code at minimum has to be smart casual or business casual, whatever you want to call it. That's basically the minimum requirement. That's how people dress in the office these days, business casual. For men, that's like a white shirt and then like a suit jacket and suit trousers, no tie. I don't know what that is for women, but you'll know. Business casual, that absolute minimum needs to be that jacket, the shirt and the like trousers or whatever. No jumper, okay? A lot of people, I know, like you probably have in school, like those sort of like sweatshirty jumpers that you get told off for wearing or something. Do not wear those, okay? Do not wear those. That is extremely unprofessional. Minimum is literally a shirt, a blazer, and no tie. However, to be honest, I would recommend going business, okay? Don't just go business casual. I would recommend going business, because although business casual is like the minimum, that's like the only like sort of thing you have to do. I would say business is better, and business is where you have a tie. So you're gonna have your white shirt, a tie on, and then your jacket, blazer over the top. I personally think that's the one to go with, because chances are you might be the only person in that assessment centre who's dressed like that. They might all be in smart casual, but if you're in business and wearing like a tie, it stands out. Okay, it's always better to be overdressed than underdressed. They can put on their email all they like dress for how you feel like, or dress what feels good for you, or dress how you would usually dress. Like, no, dress in business with your tie, your jacket. Again, for girls, I don't know what that is, but you'll know what that is. Dress as smart as you can, because you're going to stand out, you're going to get remembered, as opposed to just looking like everyone else with their like scruffy sweatshirt and everything. So you need to make sure you're dressing extremely well. Now I'm just going to differentiate now between in-person and virtual, just to explain some like different things of like admin-y stuff for the interview. Obviously in person, you're going to be going into an actual in-person assessment centre. You can be in the same room as these people. Whereas virtual, you can be on like a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting. So I'm going to start off with virtual. And the first thing is look at the webcam. Throughout your whole interview, you need to make sure you're looking directly at the webcam, okay? Do not look at yourself on the screen in front of you, because you've probably noticed right now it's a bit jarring. It's a bit off-putting the way I'm looking at you right now, because I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at the screen. Instead, you want to lift your eyes up like that, look exactly at the webcam, okay? rather than down here like that. You want to be up at the webcam. So whatever trick you want to use, maybe put a post-it note on the top of your laptop, like pointing at the webcam, but you want to be pointing at that tiny dot that's right at the top and just looking into it, and basically looking into it as much as you can the whole time you're giving your answers. Like you might have to look down at notes or whatever, but don't be looking at yourself, don't be looking out the window. You want to be looking straight in the camera to make eye contact. In terms of actual lighting, you want foreground lighting in case you don't want background lighting. So a background lighting would be where you have like a light or a window behind you. That's not what you want, because you're going to look like very dark, very grey, like they're not really going to be able to see you, and that just doesn't give off like a good impression. You want foreground lighting, so that means like a lamp in front of you, and preferably a window. So where possible, if you can get natural light, that's way better. So if you can get natural light, a window in front of you, that's the best option. But if that's not possible, then the next best thing would be like a lamp in front of you, sort of shining on you. Make sure you're checking it before you join the call, just so that it looks good and professional. And now one of the benefits of a virtual interview is because obviously you're at home, you can put things everywhere, okay? And this is something I 100% recommend, notes everywhere. So first of all, your CV, blue tack, your CV on the wall behind your laptop. So when like they give me a question, they say, give me a time you worked as a team, for example, I can just look at my CV, team, D of E, look straight down. It can literally be something like that. While you answer, if you need a quick reminder, you can just do that as you're doing it. Like it is very subtle, is a really good way. And you've got this advantage because you're a virtual interview. You can just print that CV just above the line of your webcam behind you. But then you also want to have like all your other notes on the table. So I'd have like my research notes in front of me. I'd have like a print off of my cover letter and application questions on the keys in front of me. Just like all these notes everywhere. So if I need to refer to everything, I quickly can. And that's a really good advantage of doing this interview virtually, is because you have access to all these notes, which you might not be able to have as easily during an in-person interview. Now, before I move on, I just want to say another thing about virtual. Often with virtual, they're not going to be looking at you. So I said that you need to make sure you're looking at them. Often at the start of the interview, they're going to say something like, oh, don't be offended if I'm not looking at you, I'm just looking at my other screen. Because they have to make lots of notes as you're writing. They have to make notes, fill in their matrix, all of that. So to be honest, most time they're going to be looking like off at a screen away from you. They'll just say something like, oh, don't be offended, don't worry about it, don't be put off if we're looking away. Or like maybe you finish talking and then it's like silence for 20 seconds because they're still typing. Don't worry about it. It's just like them finishing off their notes. They're going to be like, right, okay, thank you, and then move on. Okay, so if there's any like silences or pauses like after you finish speaking, or like they're not looking at you, don't worry about it. That's just because they're like looking at their second screen while they're doing it. Now, moving on to in-person, the biggest thing about this is the body language and like in-person interaction, because you're going to be in the same room. You need to make sure your body language is on point, okay? So as you enter the room with these people, straight away it's a handshake with both of them, firm handshake, looking them in the eyes. And that is the most important thing with this interview, is you need to make sure you're looking them in the eyes. This is even more important than when you're doing it virtually, because if you're not looking at the webcam, okay, fine, it's not the end of the world. But in person, if you're like looking away from them like this, or like looking, it's not good. You need to be looking them in the eyes. If there's two of them, you're like switching between each one, doing like 5 seconds in each eye, and sort of just going between each one when you feel like. Just make sure you're constantly going between, looking at them in the eyes properly. Like you want to be going to a point where like they're looking away, because like your eye contact is like that's the way I do it. You don't want to be like under eye contacting them, where you're like not looking at them enough. You want to basically do it where you're like eye contacting them almost too much. I think that's a much better way of doing it. It's how I did it. About body language again, so you basically want to make sure you're sitting up tall, like shoulders back, all of that sort of thing, like open body. You don't want to be like closed in, like arms crossed, or like legs like really close together or anything. You want to be like open, sitting on your chair nice and tall, not like slouching or anything. You want to be here open to both of them, smiling. Smiling is really important. If you can try and get a bit of like sort of banter sort of thing with the interviewer, like you're sorted, you're set, that's gonna do so well. So it's like a couple of interviews I've had, like they've been joking around, like that. I think the clocks had just changed, and like there was a clock on the wall behind me, and they were making jokes about that like at the start, and then they went back to it at the end. And if you can just sort of develop that rapport with your interview, it's really good. So another one of my interviews, I purposely put a music stand in the background, just as like, because this is sort of like psychologically like remind them that I'm a musician, and then a musician shows dedication, perseverance, all that. It was like sort of a psychological trick to make them think I'm a better person. So I put that in the background, and actually when I got into the interview, they said, "Oh, is that a music instrument? What instrument do you play?" And I said, "I play trumpet." And "Oh, I play trumpet." And then it's a conversation like that. Building rapport like that is really good. So I just thought I'd add that in there. Like, if you build rapport and like you're having a good conversation, like making jokes to them, it just makes the whole thing so much easier. Like, kills all the nerves if you had any, just makes everyone more relaxed. So make sure you're smiling, basically, is a really important thing. And as I said, with virtual you can stick up all your notes everywhere. In person it's more difficult, but I would still say bring hard copies of everything, because it means if they ask you a question like, "Tell me about your CV," you don't have to do it off by heart. You can literally get your CV out, have a look through, like you can offer them copy. They probably will already have, but just offering them copies shows that you've printed off like full copies of it and you're prepared and you like think about things like that. So making sure you're having hard copies is a really important thing, and you can like refer to them. You can like put it on the page in front of you, like your CV or like your cover letter, just so you can respond to it. Obviously you can't do as many notes. Like at home you can fill the whole table, fill the whole wall. In this one you can probably get away with just putting like 2 pages on the table for you to briefly glance down on. But just make sure you're bringing hard copies of everything, because more than anything it just shows you're prepared and you're a really organised person. Now that is the interview. So that has been a very detailed guide to the interview, full guide to the interview. I've gone through the structure of it, what a strength-based interview is, common questions including those introduction questions, told you about the STAR method and how you need to answer it. I've talked to you about those other sorts of questions like weaknesses and challenges. I've told you how to deal with a rogue interview question you don't know about, and I've just explained like from my story, like it really doesn't matter. I've got you prepared and ready for when they ask about your other offers. I've given you questions to ask them, which is really important. Then also I've just given you like general admin, body language, eye contact tips, notes, that sort of thing. So you should be completely set now for your interview within the assessment centre. You know everything about the interview stage. One more thing I would say is just practice. If you can get practice for a degree apprenticeship interview, then you're going to be really set, because then all these techniques and sort of stuff I've taught you today, you're going to be able to employ, and means you're ready for the assessment centre. This was the interview stage. To see the rest of the assessment centre full guide, including the group exercise, case study, presentation and more, click here or go to the first link in the description. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.